Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the PMP Big Boy XL. Wow, this is definitely what I'd call an XL sized folder. It is built and priced in a way that makes it not a premium or ultra expensive knife by any stretch of the imagination. It is available right now. I'll link it right down below. You guys can check it out if you want. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to Tools for Gents for sending both of these in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. What's the deal there? You got one that's a flipper, and you got one with no deployment mechanism whatsoever. Why? Well, it's because Tools for Gents often caters to the European knife market, and we forget here in America because we have it really easy. Most of us, especially like people like me who live in Kansas, we're like, sure, carry an automatic battle axe down the street to get groceries. Nobody cares, right? No, literally no one cares. And I got to tell you, where I live, which is, again, an area where you can carry pretty much whatever you want, we have almost zero knife crime, like right in the heart of the United States, like literally almost zero knife crime. I can literally carry whatever I want here. I feel for you over in Europe, where your laws are just draconic and just stupid. I get it, right? But for those of you who live in the United States and you're very confused about why this knife has no obvious one-hand deployment mechanism, it's because some areas of Europe, I guess, have outlawed knives that open with one hand, right? You go from being not a threat at all to, holy crap! He's able to deploy it with one hand! Call backup! Oh my God, I'm sorry, that's so ridiculous to me. We're gonna use this guy for the review today. Let's go ahead and measure it. The overall length of the PMP Big Boy XL, if I didn't say, because there is a regular Big Boy, 9.75 inches. Blade length is, I said 4.5. It's 4 1/4. Cutting edge is about 4 1/16. So this is absolutely what I consider to be an XL folding knife. Full size to me starts at about 8 inches overall. A large folder would be like 8.5 to 9, right? Anything that's over 9 inches to me is XL. Let's do some size comparisons here. So any custom skills you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. Up against the 8010 and the 8020.5, you can see what I mean here. It's the Cold Steel and Demco 8010 is a robust knife, definitely more robust, I'd say, than the Big Boy here, the Big Boy XL. But it is actually factually a smaller knife in terms of overall length and cutting edge, quite a bit less. So you can see, I mean, this is a great, indicator exactly how big this knife is. It's obviously substantially larger than the 8020.5. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. It's obviously substantially larger there as well. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Group Tilliner, in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. There you go. How's the action? It's good. It's exactly what you'd expect. This is actually a build. The overall profile of this knife is a profile that we've seen a million times, right? In fact, I'm certain that there'll be dozens of people saying that knife looks like the this or the that, right? It looks like a million different knives. You tell me a knife that you think it looks like, and I'll give you 10 more examples. I promise you. It's just a generic, classic blade profile and a generic, classic handle profile combined together. The unique factor here is that it's substantially larger than what we normally see. Access to the lock bar is very good. It's a little bit bitey, though. They've got these these sharp jimps. It's kind of a 90-degree angle. So you do have access from the side, but you will notice, repeatedly disengaging it. That flipper tab does come down and block the blade from falling directly on your thumb, so that's nice. Weight and mass of the blade is really causing it to be almost fully dropped shut. We have what I'd call, for this size, probably a medium heavy D10. It's enough leverage to flip it. It's not going to be the most satisfying thing in the entire world, but there's definitely enough there, especially when you light switch it to get the blade to come out. I don't think you'll have a problem with it. It should just get smoother over time. Let's go ahead and do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is definitely on the thicker side. In fact, let's put it up again. I know people say those are aftermarket scales. They're about the same, actually slightly thinner, I think, maybe, than the standard scales. So it's about the same, maybe slightly thinner than the factory AD10. So it's fairly thick. Let's do length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This knife, the overall profile is actually pretty tall, right? If you compare the flipper tab to the max height of the blade, it's actually meeting, maybe exceeding the maximum height of the PM2. Really, obviously, we're going to notice it. The overall length and thickness of the knife. It is a substantially thicker and larger folder than the average folder. So let's go ahead and get out my tools for a hardware check. You can... My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel. Or the pinned comment. We have T8 for the pivot, which is fantastic. For some reason, PMP insists on continuing to use tiny fasteners on large knives. We don't like this. PMP, I love your company. I think you guys do some really, really cool stuff. Some of the most interesting stuff in the last few years, for sure. Stop using T6 fasteners on these larger folders. It's weird. And a T8 is much more preferable. In this case, it would match the pivot, and anybody disassembling the knives is not going to have to change out the pivot to go to a T6, which is just that much more likely to strip out either the bit or the fastener. Not if you have quality tools. I do. They as they fall out of the container. The bits are plenty, high quality. But a T6 bit with tinier teeth and a T6 fastener with a smaller area, smaller depth, you're just more likely. That's just how it works. It's just more likely to strip. T8, please. That would be excellent. 2 on each side. It's not a deal breaker that it's using T6. It's just kind of annoying. You can flip the pocket clip over and mount it for lefty carry, so that's excellent. Thank you, PMP, for that. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and weigh it. What are we looking at for materials? So the blade steel is 14C28N. And there's a lot of it. We have G10 and we have steel liners. Very, very basic build. Nothing special going on here except for the amount of material used. So weight on the Big Boy XL is, wow, 6.7 ounces. Who could have seen that coming? Everybody. It's big. It's going to be heavy, right? PMP has certainly made larger knives, but there's no reason to expect this knife to come in anywhere near 5 ounces, right? It's a lot. It's a lot of steel liners. It's a lot of blade. It's a lot of material. So it's going to be heavy. Balance on this knife is a ways back of the pivot too. As we get bigger and longer and heavier, this imbalance, or the further away from the pivot that the center point is, the more noticeable it is. And this knife is noticeably heavy. It's big. You're going to notice it, right, when you pick it up and hold it. Unless you've been EDCing the Cold Steel Espada XL. You got to mention that every time because they forget. Really, those guys have a short attention span. They're thinking only of the next opportunity to tell you about the Cold Steel Espada XL. We get it. We get it. Let's... I'm sorry. I'm still doing that. I'm still poking fun at those guys. I've been making fun of that group for, the entirety of the channel. It's been 6 years. 6 years of making fun of those guys. I like the Espada XL. I think it's a great knife, but the people who take it seriously, oh God, talk about the easiest targets in the world, man. Anyways, let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here. I think it's actually a pretty darn thick blade. I would venture to guess that's at least 150 thousandths, but let's find out. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, it's less than that. It's 145 thousandths, which means it's just slightly thicker than the Spyderco PM2 blade. I think we're actually ready to move on to the meat and potatoes here. All right, there's not really a whole lot to say. It's a really straightforward knife. This is definitely a knife that is built for, utility. Taking it out and using it. The washer system on the inside of this one is actually different than this one. I believe this one is actually running on washers. You can kind of see in there. This one right here is running on bearings, which we can see just barely in there, a little different, right? So there are actually some people, right, who are going to look at this and go, I don't really care that it takes 2 hands to open. That's better for me. So if you're the type of person who thinks that washers only belong on cheap knives and that, you know, because every now and then I get a comments in the comment section saying, wow, for that much money, it really should have been bearings. You can get knives that cost $20 that run on bearings. The pivot, whether it's nylon washers, like if it's nylon washers, it's phosphor bronze washers, or it's bearings, has almost nothing to do with the tier of quality that it's in. There are multi-$1,000 knives that run on washers, and there are incredibly cheap knives that run on bearings. That is not a way of measuring value. It's not an element that goes into it. It is literally decided by the person who's designing the knife, right? There are pros and cons to each. Bearings will help the knife, you know, if the detent's tuned properly, it can help the knife flip or, you know, just have action, like pivot action that is satisfying to people who really like a very drop shutty or smooth pivot action. Washers can achieve that, but usually the benefit to phosphor bronze in particular is that it does a much better job of keeping debris out of the pivot, which is really beneficial for people that are using knives in dusty, dirty environments, things like that, right? So it's a preference. It is not a universal measure of value. There are going to be some people who live in the USA who can legally carry this one, or other places of the world where you can legally carry this, who will opt for this simply because of the washers. That it's that much of a preference, right? So you pick the one you want. But this one has noticeably, it's still smooth. It's just not the same, you know, it feels exactly like what it is. It feels like washer action versus bearing action. But this is what I'd call good washer action. Both of them are locking out completely solid, so that's great. PMP usually does a great job. If you're not familiar with PMP, they are made in China. This is a Chinese OEM, so there you go. Handle profile and ergonomics are great, and I think a lot of it is the fact that we have a regular, totally reasonable pocket clip on this guy. There would be no reason to make this clip huge just because the rest of the knife is big. In fact, it's doing what I always talk about. Because this is a normal size pocket clip, it's coming in well before the 50% line on this knife, meaning it's way back here and the bill is not super prominent. So the end result of that is that this knife is very ergonomically comfortable. I mean, this is a big outdoor folder. If you're going to do a lot of, you know, continuous cutting outside, gloves or not, this is actually a decent folder to do it with because you've got so much of the knife filling your hand out. It's very secure, very comfortable. You have an enormous amount of blade, and the blade is mostly flat ground and relatively thin behind the edge. Still robust enough to, you know, to take out and use fairly hard. Not abuse, but use hard. It's a good long-term user blade, right? In terms of just like that task, whatever it is you're going to do. If you're going to do like 15 to 30 minutes of cutting at a time, this is a good folder for that. Depending on, of course, what it is you're doing. There's lots of different knives that'll do same task with equal efficiency. But if you need a longer blade and you're going to do a lot of cutting, this is not a bad choice at all. 14T28N, one of the best steels that you can get under $100. Very, you know, I mean, consistently. Obviously, even sometimes we even see CPM 20CV for under you know, $100. But when I say that, I mean consistently, not special edition runs or limited runs. 14T28N holds a decent edge, is plenty tough, very easy to touch up, and is stainless. So it's a very good, you know, well-rounded user steel. Nice swedge up top. Very even cutting bevel all the way out to the tip. Just says PMP Big Boy XL on one side and 14C28N. That's fine. We have peel ply textured G10 scales with a little bit of extra sauce here. Just something to kind of break up the boringness of just having continuous peel ply scales. Got a big old lanyard hole. That's fine. It's in front of the pocket clip, but the pocket clip is not, you know, resting in a shallow carry position, which is not good. It's just medium, which is fine. Let's see here. Like I said, mountable for left or right-handed carry. That's great because there is definitely a right and wrong way to have the knife in your pocket. So it's nice that lefties have an option for the correct way to carry it in their you know, preferable pocket. Steel liner lock, no blade play up, down, left or right. Both knives will survive a triple tap, which is all that's required of them on this channel. No blade play, no lock stick. This one's got a little bit of pivot lash. I think you can even hear it. A little bit. Not my favorite thing in the world to see, but truthfully does not affect use. This one has no pivot lash. So, okay, maybe just a weird fit and finish issue there. Centering, perfect on this guy. How about this guy? Yeah, looking good. No detent lash. Easier to fill it with a flipper tab. Again, no detent lash. Outside of the pivot lash on the washer one, which I'm sure is just random chance, they're fine. So pricing on these all over the place. I've seen these as low as 60 bucks and as high as like 95 euros. So wow, we gotta have consistent pricing. I understand, you know, over tools for gents is gonna be a little bit more expensive. That's just how it's gonna be, right? But realistically, this is a $65 to $70 knife, I think. So if you can find it for right around that price, maybe a little bit more, you know, I wouldn't say 80 is necessarily a bad price, but in my opinion, this is a budget knife. It should be priced that way. The problem is there's a wide range of pricing depending on where you get it from. I'm going to link tools for gents, but if you look around, sometimes you can find it a little bit less. I just want to be honest with you guys. So yeah, I think it's if you're looking for an XL size budget knife that you're going to take out and use, especially this one here with the washers, I think it's a pretty good buy, right around 70 bucks, right? The closer you get to 100 bucks though, it's like, yeah, you know, there might be some better options out there, but it's a cool looking knife for sure. I have to get upstairs and tell my kids to stop screaming. That's what you're hearing in the background because they're still home for spring break. So I want to say that, you know, I'm going to put this in the budget knives category because I did find it on the internet for under $75. And I'm also going to put it in my, you know, my cheap knives I like playlist because I'm going to recommend it to people. But it's kind of like with an asterisk, you know, if you can find it for that reasonable price tag. And of course, if you're looking for an XL knife. But I did enjoy this one. It was cool. And we don't have many budget options at this size. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.